been a very, very sad weekend at the Boston Globe with those obituaries, the editorial today, and it all coming in a presidential campaign. It's easy to forget from day to day that there is a presidential campaign, but the president seems to think the way to run his campaign is in that White House briefing room every day by getting in these fights with reporters.
That's right. I mean, I think in a sense, we're being reminded every day that he's running a campaign because he's using those briefing opportunities of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, in fact, to continue running for president and campaigning for president. And that is part of what inspired this editorial today, which is to say, if the president is going to use that platform to make his case for the presidency, it's time we take him on and really judge him on his own terms. He talked about in his inauguration speech in 2017, American carnage. This American carnage stops right here, stops right now. He was describing factories scattered across the American landscape like tombstones. When has the American landscape ever looked more like a gravesite than it does today, now in 2020, under his watch? And with many of these deaths, much of the economic devastation preventable if the president would have taken earlier action, if the White House would have aggressively contained this outbreak on the onset. And here we are, weeks later, watching that unfold. I think if you look at the president's statements, even in late February, where he said there would be the cases would come close to zero in a couple of days, that this was going to disappear, reassuring the American public, in fact, misleading the public about the threat. We can just use his own words to evaluate how his presidency has unfolded and how he's doing in responding to this pandemic.
John Heilemann, there's an old rule in politics that I used to see when I was a kid in Boston watching people running for city council all the way up to the highest offices, which is that when your opponent is in trouble and struggling, just get out of the way and let the opponent do that. And there's an argument to be made for the Biden campaign just basically staying out of the way, putting out ads, but let Donald Trump have that stage if that stage is working against him every day, if he's alienating more people every day in the White House briefing room.
Right. I mean, I think the reality is that Joe Biden, and I've said this before, is in a challenging position in one sense, because he has no public office. He has no official platform. He's not engaged in this fight in any kind of practical, tangible way. And so at times he's struggled to get traction because he's in his basement in Wilmington, Delaware, and he's trying to occasionally say like what his plan would be if he were president now, whatever. None of it matters, it seems to me, Lawrence, because the president is losing right now. He's losing because he doesn't understand that the things that he's saying, the ways he's behaving, how he's acting in these epic, long briefings every day. You're correct. He is running his campaign from the White House briefing room, and he's running it badly. And you can see that reflected in the numbers. You can see it reflected not just in the head-to-head polling numbers that have Biden ahead by 7, 8, 9 points, depending on which poll you look at, depending on whether you're looking at battleground states or nationally, but all of them have Biden ahead. But also on the crucial question, we talked about this earlier in the show, it's going to be a referendum election. You look at Donald Trump's approval rating after having a brief little flurry of rally around the leader, a little boost. It's fallen back now to where it was before the crisis. That's never happened before. We have big crises in America and people rally around the president. Not happening for Trump. And then on the key issue of dealing with the coronavirus, Biden polls way ahead of Trump on that issue. And then finally, on this big question, are Americans right now more worried about the pandemic coming back, or are they more worried about the economy? Trump is trying to convince them, focus on the economy. We've got to open up. And overwhelmingly, 2/3 of the country says, no, we're much more worried about the virus and we'd like to stick with these stay-at-home regulations. So Trump's losing every argument he's in the middle of. He's losing. And if I'm the Biden campaign, I'm sort of happy right now that I'm not in the middle of this fight. Just let the guy continue to keep making the mistakes he's making.